with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. Welcome friends, allies, and those that just want more information on what's going on with COVID-19, our community, and our prison systems and jails. I'd like to give you a few instructions on how to navigate this webinar interface, just in case you're unfamiliar with it. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a ribbon. And on the ribbon, there are two boxes, one that says Q&A. If you'd like to ask questions, you can type your questions in there, or you can actually type them into the chat box. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see those two items. You click on them, and you're able to type directly in there. And as the Q&A questions, or as questions arise, I'll be able to answer those. So my name is Sam Lewis. I'm the Executive of ARC, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I'm also a former life prisoner who spent 24 years in the California Department of Corrections Rehabilitation. Since coming home over 8 years ago, my job has been to help our system become more equitable and to end mass incarceration in the state of California. I'd like to give you a couple of updates since our last fireside chat. So ARC has shifted completely to virtual programming. So our day-to-day programming for all of our 1,500 members is done via Zoom internally. We're also doing therapy for all of our members who have signed on via Zoom. Our Second Chance Pre-Apprenticeship Boot Camp with Southwest College, the LA Federation of Labor, and the McGill Contreras Foundation has also gone virtual. So we've shifted as an organization in order to be able to continue to serve our members. We are also creating content for people that are currently incarcerated. So the shift for us has been pretty quick, and I'm thankful for an amazing staff. Updates for the CDCR reports. One additional staff is now tested positive at Wasco State Prison. Staff are now required to literally do a touchless temperature check before entering the facilities, and any volunteers that are going in. The Department of Juvenile Justice for Youth, which we once called Youth Authority, is now allowing juveniles to have virtual visits via Skype for approved visitors. So if you have additional questions, please send them my way. We'll continue to update you on both our Instagram channel and our Facebook. I'd like now to introduce, and it is my honor to introduce, Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer, who has been serving the voice of the people in California's 59th District in the State Assembly. Reggie Byron Jones-Sawyer has been a member of the California State Legislature since November 2012. The district he represents encompasses a wide range of diverse, culturally rich, and dynamic communities that lies entirely within the Los Angeles County and includes the neighborhoods of South Los Angeles, Florence, Firestone, Walnut Park, and portion of the Huntington Park area. In the legislature, Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer is the chair of the Public Safety Committee and serves on the following standing committees: Governmental Organization, Agriculture, Budget, Labor, and Employment. He is the chair of the Select Committee on the Status of Boys and Men of Color and sits on the Budget Subcommittee number 5, Public Safety. He also sits on the following select committees: 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games, Community and Law Enforcement Relations and Responsibilities, Diabetes and Heart Disease Prevention, and Census and Hate Crimes. I had the pleasure of meeting Assemblymember Reggie Jones some years ago. We've been different places. We've actually been in juvenile hall to talk to youth. We've been in Ironwood State Prison to learn, to share the experience of speaking to people that are literally working to change their lives. And we also had an opportunity to travel to a different country to see what different systems looks like as opposed to our system, and trying to find better ways for our correctional system to actually operate. So again, it is my pleasure to introduce Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. It's always a pleasure to see Sam. As I tell a lot of people who ask me about how do you know Sam, I said, well, I know Sam every time I see Sam. And so everyone Jordan gets a chuckle out of that because every time I see Sam, I'm going to not only prisons here in the States, but I visited prisons in Norway, so that we can get a better understanding of what really works and what doesn't work, and really bring those best practices back to California so we can improve the system into not only a more equitable system, but I'm hoping that one where we call our system the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And I like to say, when I first got here in 2012, you would look at corrections as a big C and rehabilitation as a small R. And I've worked real hard to get that to a capital R, because I think that is the most equitable way that we can move prison reform. If we were a business and we used the methodology that we use for this, we would have been out of business a long time ago. As economically doesn't make any sense for people to come back over and over again if we're not rehabilitating them. It just absolutely does not make any sense. And in fact, when I first got to the legislature in 2012, and I've told this to Sam and many others before, I had every private prison come into my office. And each one of them said that they needed 10,000 more prison beds over the next 10 years. And they could determine that number with 100% accuracy. And I asked them what algorithm they used, and I got that for my kids. My kids are math majors, so I don't know what an algorithm is, but I just put it out there. And they told me it was by the number of third graders that can't read at third grade level, they can determine how many of them will end up in prison. Being from South LA and representing South LA, I said, why not we educate every last one of them so we determine how many more colleges and universities we need to build. And as I told Sam in this story, since 2012, not one of those private prisons have come back to my office to meet with me. So that tells me if we educate our young people, we provide them an opportunity, we can stop and cut off that school to prison pipeline, which I have a select committee on right now, to end the school to prison pipeline, where we talk about specific budget items and specific legislation that will end it. We no longer need to talk about the problem. We need to talk about the solutions and then implement them. I'm a big proponent of implementing. And so I'm glad to be with you. Unfortunately, it's under these adverse, unique, extraordinary conditions that no one could ever predict. It's not only impacting every facet of our normal everyday life, it's impacting the economy in ways that we never understood. We never could plan or understand. And it's happening in real time, but it's happening in a really short period of time. This is not like a slow burn of a year, 2 years. This is like 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks that we're experiencing these extraordinary circumstances. And so as a former emergency preparedness coordinator, it also tells me what we need to do in the future to prepare for this. And I may elaborate on that a little bit more, but this is something, a pandemic, a public health crisis like this, it is not in our emergency preparedness books. Let me say that now. And if it is, it's one little 2-sentence paragraph, because no one could have predicted a pandemic of this scale. And no one knew what to do. We're writing the rules for this right now. And so whatever we're doing in the correctional system, these are all new. There is no playbook for it. And so we're doing the best we can to ensure that everyone's on both sides are safe. But most important, we're writing the book on how we deal with these emergencies, these national emergencies, and the prison system. And I believe, and I hope, California becomes a leader in this. But most important, when we do for those of you who play bid whist, when we do the after whist, that means when we dialogue and talk about what we did and did right and what we didn't. I'm hoping that California is the beacon of light that shows the right way to do it.
So let me ask you, like during this lockdown that everybody's describing it, so I've really been working from home, everything from home, except for going out to go grocery shopping, and maybe to walk or ride our bicycles just to get fresh air, my wife and I. what has this lockdown been like for you? Like the past 2 weeks personally, what has it been like? How have you been doing during this lockdown?
So I'm in a unique situation where um, I have to get my gloves and my mask, and I have to go out to ensure that the food banks are working properly in South Los Angeles, especially Southeast cities, where I have a lot of immigrant population. And many of them are in long lines in food banks, for example. And I literally have to say social distance and then tell people you can't cut in line. Just simple things like that, because those lines are enormous in some cases. So that the need for food in disadvantaged communities is unbelievable. The need of businesses getting, especially small businesses, and I'm talking about really small businesses, where it's a mom and pop. I went to, if you go to my website, you'll see I went to a burger stand, Emmy. The son typed on on his Facebook that my mom and dad, the business is about to go under. The rent is due in a couple of weeks. Could you please come over and patronize our store? So I took my whole staff and treated them there, and it is, it's like a ghost town. It's like watching a movie when you drive up and down some of these blocks and streets. It is it's something, again, it's something you didn't plan. So I'm worried about the businesses. I'm worried about the employees who get laid off. Many of them may have been formerly incarcerated. But I have the second most um, number of people who are released from prison come to South Los Angeles. And so I also have a large group of people who have been, unfortunately, not able to get unemployment. And if they did, they're the first ones to be laid off or to be furloughed. And so now these systems that we set up are even more important. But a lot of times they're not necessarily for immigrant and not necessarily for formerly incarcerated. And so I'm worried that they will fall through the cracks. You know, right now we're like really trying to work on home. I have people that were just one paycheck from being homeless. And that's my district. These individuals could become homeless overnight as we're watching this. And so we have to work on, I'm working on the recovery, making sure there's social infrastructure there that can take care of people medically. I have clinics. I have one hospital, which is Children's Hospital in my district. But the Children's Hospital doesn't handle the kind of cases that are coming in. They don't have emergency rooms like a regular hospital. So the clinics, which we have a plethora of in South Los Angeles, I need to make sure people are going to them. Ironically, there are no lines at a lot of my clinics in South LA. That's ridiculous. They're all going to hospitals because we keep saying hospital, hospital, hospital. You know, we could take a lot of that off of the hospitals by having people come to clinics. So I'm having banks. I'm actually going out because I need to make sure, you know, people can tell you something's running right, but until you eyeball it, you really don't know. So I go out and I eyeball it and make sure that everything's running right. The clinics, they need masks, they need gloves, they need some other equipment. So I'm trying to make sure they get those. I'm also going out to see what the workload is like. And that we can take some of that workload off the hospital. So I'm gonna put out some messaging on that. And then just making sure the immigrant population and even our population that formerly incarcerated aren't harassed, aren't recriminalized or deported. There's some disturbing news that I'm getting from the national folks who want to maybe even ramp up their immigration policy. Maybe want to ramp up having law enforcement go out and incarcerate people again. So we need to be vigilant and keep our eyes on those kind of things. And that's, I mean, essentially that's what I've been doing in addition to taking briefings from the governor's office, speaker's office, law enforcement, and the medical professionals who actually know how to deal with this virus.
So
I've been
busy. So we've first and foremost, let me read this one comment real quick that just came in. Thank you for your work at the food bank. The homelessness issue was bad enough, but compounded with our homeless citizens that go through when places and people they normally deal with daily and it's hard for them to get food. So thank you. You're greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to share that with you. But we received some questions from our audience in advance, and we're receiving questions live. So I'd like to share with you one question. Could you share with us what the state legislature is doing in regards to safety measures that are being put into place for people that are incarcerated inside state facility, county and state facilities?
So there's a growing need to ensure that that everyone is safe. So, and I'm looking for my sheet that I had that went down, and with all technology, which I hate, which is like this. I'm old school in that I like paper, and the reason I like paper is because when you lose all of your stuff on the internet, you just lose it. Okay, so I'm just going to have to wing it because I don't have it right now. So the CDCR is working to make sure that we establish some kind of distance, because we're all in close quarters once you're incarcerated, as you know, Sam, and probably a lot of you. And so we've had one case, one inmate that has been diagnosed with coronavirus. That person's been quarantined for 14 days. There are about 5 staff members that have also moved out of the system to make sure they're quarantined and they're watching them. That should tell you that it is not coming from. We could make the assumption that it's not coming from within the prison, but what's coming from outside. And so that's why you see a lot of the rules and regulations that are coming up that talk about restricting visitation, which is very important. Even canceling all conjugal visits. That is, again, to not only protect people inside, but hopefully to protect people on the outside. And so we're doing all of those measures to ensure that everybody's safe. The CDCR, which is kind of close to my heart, rehabilitation program. And this may be something that we probably should have been doing anyway, but we're closely looking at how can we do it cyberly. And this could be a godsend. And so now we're looking at methodologies like we're doing now. Why can't we have webinars? Why can't we have teaching where that professor could be at a major university teaching within CDCR, where we have videos and we can teach people to not only college courses, but really important. I'm really into learning skills like carpentry, electrician, plumbers. I wish I had a skill. Look, if I lose my job tomorrow, I gotta send out resumes and a whole bunch of other stuff. But if I was a carpenter electrician, I could knock on someone's door and say, I can fix that. I have a skill, something that can last me. We could spread this all over the system. And so this may be a godsend in where we're looking at how can we continue those rehabilitation programs using the internet and other things to provide that. And then I guess the other thing, until I get my paperwork up, is really the CDCR and others are trying to come up with a way that I know. Look, I've worked on making sure we didn't do solitary confinement, and in a lot of ways, I'm sure you feel it, and everybody out there that's watching this, in some ways you feel like you're in solitary confinement. Every once in a while, you go out to the store to get some food, or you go out to the store to pick up some food, but you go out and come back, or go out and get some medicine. You're restricted almost, 20 hours a day in your home. Yes, you have a lot of stuff, but that same feeling, even though you're not in a smaller confined area, you're in a confined area. And I think a lot of people are in California and maybe in America may be a little more sensitive to some of the issues we've been talking about for quite some time. And so this could be an opportunity, one, to keep our prisons safe and make sure everyone in that prison is safe. But the other thing is, it could be an opportunity to let people understand what people go through that have been incarcerated or confined in those types of situations, and then maybe appreciate how someone really wants to work hard to get out of that situation.
That's interesting, because I was speaking to one of my staff members yesterday, and he was sharing with me how difficult it was. He had spent 10 years inside, and he said I almost feel like I'm back inside because I'm trapped in my house and I can't go out. And he's like, I wonder if people understand how difficult it is for people that are inside to be in even a smaller dwelling, as opposed to a house where you can go from bedroom to your dining room to the living room to your backyard. But in a cell, you don't have those options. The Los Angeles County Sheriff has reported that 1,700 people have been released from the county jails in response to the corona outbreak. As the Assembly's chair of public safety, do you believe this is a good move?
So let me put it in a different way. So we do need to make sure that there's no overcrowding. The fact that overcrowding not only in the prison system has been onerous, we've shifted a lot of people down to the county jail, and now they're experiencing the same overcrowding that we had. Let me put this out there for everyone to chew on and think, especially people who were concerned about the decision about bail. And in the bail, we were going to use, in the legislation that went through, risk assessment tactics, and trying to come up with a methodology of who should be released early, who should not be released, but who should go and be held in prison or in jail, as opposed to who should be released on their own recognizance. And we were going to come up with our own methodology of it. Right now, that's being done, but those risk assessments are determined normally by one person, either the sheriff or the chief of police. Think, if we had not had bail held up for a while because of the impending ballot initiative, so everything is kind of the same. Think if we had that risk assessment where we could have fine-tuned it, we would have had a methodology on who should be released and not. Right now, the sheriff decides, or right now, the chief of police. Right now, CDCR decides, and Secretary Ralph Diaz decides if people need to be released. That shouldn't be on just one person. That's one decision should not. We should have an algorithm, if you want to use. We should have a methodology on how that's done. We can debate whether or not judges decide or not decide. We can debate that, but at least we have something we could chew on. Because right now, I couldn't tell you whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea for the sheriff to release like 1,700 individuals, because he's telling me it's non-violent, non-sexual. He's telling me he's doing that. I would have to take his word, because we have no system in place where we could document each individual that he's released, what were the standards that they used to make that decision. Because saying non is pretty general, and until you get down into each one, you really don't know. And especially if, we're all human. There's 1,700 individuals that may be released. All it takes is for one of them to do something really horrendous to make people want to go back to the bad old days. And so I worry about that more than anything else, that we end up going to the bad old days, where we're just like, lock them up, keep them there. We don't care if they're rehabilitated or not. I just feel safer that they're in this place where I don't have to worry about them, as opposed to releasing them and giving them an opportunity to show that they can be an asset to society. For all we know, the 1,700 could come out and do amazing things. But again, we're letting them out in probably one of the most horrendous times, where there's a virus, you gotta stay home, and there's probably not many job opportunities out there. or do they go back to the job? Do they don't have a job? So there's a lot of things in play that could make this not a very good thing for the sheriff. I know his intentions are what they're well intentioned, because he can't have everybody on top of one another. And LA County jail system, which incidentally also has the largest mental health facility in the country. So I just wish we had standards that I would rather have that discussion about the standards we're using to make those determinations of when we early release people, and then we implement that, than what we have now. We don't have to depend on usually one individual to make that determination.
Thank you for that answer. So my next question is, so as the sheriff has released 1,700, reportedly released 1,700, is there any consideration being looked at for elderly people and people that are literally, let's say you're 60 days from being released from CDCR, you're going to go home in 60 days anyway, or if you have underlying health issues, let's say you have a weak immune, some type of weak immune issue, and you're 65 years old, is there consideration for compassionate release or early release for those individuals in order to create more ability to social distance, so to speak, inside the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation?
So, as you know, Sam, my colleagues and I have been working on compassionate release ever since I've been here. My position has always been, look, if someone's, and I usually use this example, if someone's 80 years old, had diabetes, probably had leg amputated, in a wheelchair, probably a little half blind, and we need to get them financially, this back to finances again, financially, if we could shift them onto the federal dole, where they can in fact take care of him and offer the state payroll, more or less. And do you expect this guy that went to jail for bank robbery and murder to be wheeling himself up to a bank and trying to rob it?
Right.
And why wouldn't you? And sometimes, and unfortunately, sometimes they only have 6 months, a year to live, and we're just keeping them there. Do you think they're going to waste their time being a criminal again? If they only have a year and they're 80 years old, they've been in prison for 50 years or more. And I said, look, we need to let them go. And we've had the hardest time trying to get that legislation implemented. Because on the other side, there are people that believe that once you get, life without parole, life without any possibility, that you should serve the entire time in prison. And that, for them, that is justice. Look, I'm just going to say, I'm going to go biblical on you right now. There are people who are like I call the Old Testament kind of folk. And that Old Testament God, she was pretty mean. I mean, eye for an eye, all of that. She didn't play around. Famine, floods, everything. I'm kind of a New Testament guy that believes in forgiveness, that people can change, that if you give someone an opportunity, they can change their bad habits. You pray for them and all of that. And you give them opportunities, they will change. And so we as a society battle that every day. And so when I talk about that 80-year-old, there are people in the legislature that will tell you they believe they need to stay there until they die. And I can understand even victims saying that because of their horrendous crime. But from a compassion standpoint, and if you spend 50, 60 years incarcerated for a crime, I in many ways, I think you don't have much to live for. I think that's the time where we show some compassion and let that individual out, so that they can spend those last days, months, maybe years, so they can have a compassionate way to pass on. And just so you know, part of at that, I worked in the mortuary system for 10 years. In many ways, I was a mortician. So I've seen families um, bury their loved ones that they didn't talk to for 20 or 30 years. Some they abandoned for a whole bunch of years, or some they alienated, and and they regretted a minute of that. Even though that person may have done they were on drugs, they may have done some horrendous things when they were young. They missed that time, and I buried over 10,000 people, and everyone I've ever met regretted not having been a little more compassionate with their family members or their friends before they passed on. And so I've seen it on the other side too.
Okay, so I have a couple of, these are real-time questions that I'd like to go to. And so from Allison, when someone in CDCR gets sick with the coronavirus, do they go to the SHU, which is, for people that don't know, that's security housing unit for isolation? So could you explain when they're isolated, where do they actually go? Is it the SHU, or do they go to a different part of prison, or are they isolating them in their cells or in a medical department?
So from what I understand, and I've been in contact with Secretary Diaz, the first isolation is medical isolation. So if there's some type of medical facility that they can keep them away from other patients, that's like the first way that they go. If they have to segregate a part of the facility where they can put them in, again, away from other individuals, and that also includes keeping them a safe distance from the correctional officers too, and making sure that the medical individuals can go in with the proper equipment. Thank God there's only one, so it's not like there was a lot where the last resort would have been the SHU. I have not heard that was the first resort that they were going to. In fact, with the last legislations that we've had, we've almost dismantled that whole system. And I'm not sure that would be, or at least that's not how it's been portrayed to me. And that's a good question. I will follow up with Secretary Diaz to make sure that is not the case, because that confinement, I don't think is the appropriate place to confine the disease. And I don't know if it's the best medical care you can give within that confined space to do what you need to do. Especially if somebody needs a respirator, they may have an underlying condition, like a heart condition. So you're going to need monitors. I don't know if all of that could fit in a confined cell. So I know that their first order of business is making sure that every inmate is safe and that they have the proper medical care. That's how we got into this receivership problem. We weren't given the proper medical care. I don't believe, and again, I'll double check, you can put someone in that confined space and give them the proper medical care that they would need, especially if they need additional, heart monitoring system. They need respirators. They need. I don't know if when the last time you've been in a hospital. Unfortunately, my mother had a heart attack, and the amount of machinery that she was on for 3 weeks was massive. And her bed had to be a certain size. So it's I don't think it would be humane right now to do that, especially if you can cordon off a place where you can have enough space.
Thank you so much for the answer. So I'd also like to share with the audience that, so initially when this first started, San Quentin had 2 buildings that were placed on quarantine because people had flu-like symptoms.
Right.
And so they were tested and found out that it was the flu and it was not the coronavirus. And so then the quarantine was lifted. So there is a process in place where if there are symptoms, they're tested, and then once it's verified, then the actual quarantine goes into effect. So far, there's only been one person that's in custody that's actually tested positive, just for information purposes, for those that are listening. Next question is, from Tammy, how long will CDCR allow lockdowns to continue with positive testing confirmed if there's actually like a bigger outbreak? Will that, in other words, how do you create social distancing if you have two people in a cell and there's an outbreak, and the cell is not that large for a person to be able to actually practice social distancing, but the institution is now locked down because more than one person. This is a hypothetical question because only one person has been tested positive.
Again, hypotheticals, again, this is all new. If that were to come up, I mean, my best guess, and again, that is a good question I can ask Secretary Diaz. And that's why we're not allowing folk to come in. That's why we're reducing visitation. That's why we're not allowing towns to go visit, so that it doesn't increase. Because that would be, as you can imagine, disastrous for any prison to have that happen. And I think they would follow the regular protocols of, right now the protocol is move someone out that has it, quarantine them for 14 days or more. We don't know how long this will last. We don't know. I think part of the question is how long will this last? And that's part of the angst that a lot of people have. I also want to make sure you understand that in addition, unless you're in that serious category of being 65 and older, having underlying conditions, your chances of surviving the coronavirus after being quarantined are good, and you should be able to recover from that. Having to expand the prison to where we have to almost have medical triage all over the place, it's new. I don't know. We would have to do it case by case, prison by prison. Do you look at some prisons that, since we've reduced the population, do we now start looking at other prisons that don't have or have no one in them? Do we make them medical quarantine hospital? We start shipping people to there. Look, I'm just spitballing right now, but I think we in CDCR and the governor and the legislature will do whatever extraordinary circumstances we need to do to make sure that everyone is safe, even if we have to set up our own hospitals. Like the governor is buying St. Vincent's. The governor is looking to I think the ship comes in today that will handle non-COVID virus individuals. That is being maybe docking into the port right now, Port of Los Angeles, to deal with that overload. And so this new hospital may just dealing with people with regular problems. And so there's, like, I can give you a bunch of different ideas of way I would handle it, but until I talk to the professionals, not only CDCR and their executives and the Secretary Diaz, I've gotten some pretty good idea from CCPOA on how to deal with this, and so that they're able to rotate the appropriate level of security that's needed for a prison. Because if all of them go down sick, that could have disastrous implications. If any of them get sick with the coronavirus, because then we may have to go to
I'm sorry, that's my landline. I'm still old school when it comes to that.
You have a phone? You're the last person in America with a phone. That's good.
so I have children in college and out of state. So just in case our cell phones don't work, I want to make sure that they're always able to reach out via landline.
Very good, very good. Again, you've given me a question to ask Secretary Diaz today. So thank you for that question.
Absolutely, thank you. Uh, so, uh, so I've shared that. I'm not sure if I shared. I actually grew up in your district, and my mom still currently lives there in your district. What brought you to serve public service? And right now, I think you already shared this, but I still like to go back. Right now, in your district, in the district that I grew up, what is your greatest concern?
My greatest concern is the same concern that I share with my neighboring communities. Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo, Speaker Rendon, Miguel Santiago. We're concerned that we will be the last ones that anyone thinks about. And we have to every day bring up issues that really are relevant to our district and really are unique to our district. I'll give you one example. Every day I hear hospital, 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 hospital. We're gonna do this hospital, that hospital, we're gonna do providing this, providing math. And so I'm on a phone call and I ask, what are you doing for clinics? Oh, you need to call this number. Whoa, 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 whoa. Clinics in my district are the first line providers. Clinics my district are the first line responders. People in my district go to clinics before they go to hospitals because they're free. They don't ask your immigration status. They don't ask if you were formerly incarcerated. They don't ask for a whole lot of questions. They just take care of you. We could take off a lot of the strain on the hospitals by having my residents, instead of running to a hospital, they would run to the clinics, which I might add are underserved right now. Clinics, and I'll put that out there. If you have family members of people in the 59th Assembly District, they can get treated almost immediately at any clinic in South Los Angeles. And I urge you to do that, especially if the underlying causes aren't COVID. They can rush you to a hospital if they need to, but they might be able to handle it right there. And you can get the best medical care in South Los Angeles. So that's one thing. And I've literally grown up in the 59th Assembly District. Manual Arts probably has part of my knee from running on that concrete track that they have, that's square. I've fallen on that thing more times than anything. My cleats never went through the ground. I don't even know why I wore cleats. It was like running on cement. So I know about Jeff, Manual, Fremont, Washington. I know more about being a student in South Los Angeles. I taught, been an assistant deputy mayor, been where South Los Angeles is my responsibility. And now I'm the assembly member of South Los Angeles. So I've done so many things in South LA. I've met with so many individuals and their problems that I not only am I ready was I ready to serve when I got here, I was ready to make sure that we got things done. And that's been a real problem in South LA. In fact, sometimes not only do I have to advocate for people in South LA, sometimes I gotta use the language that is unique to the people who live in my district. And that may put people off, but it gets their attention. And we make sure that we get resources. That's how I was able to get $100 million for rehabilitation programs inside prisons, because I knew when those people got out, guess where they're coming? They're coming back to South LA. That's why I did the Youth Reinvestment Act to handle the trauma that our young people are dealing with now, so that they can deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, which I've renamed post-traumatic street disorder, because what goes on in the streets of South LA are much worse than what goes on in Afghanistan, Iraq. And so we need to understand that we need to take care of our own, but we also need to advocate. We don't advocate as hard. We don't have lawyers. People in my district, African American and Latino, we gotta go to work. Sometimes we can't go to PTA meetings. Sometimes we can't go to council meetings. Sometimes we can't go to neighborhood councils because we gotta put food on the table. And the thing that bothers me the most, and I'm thanking you for this question, Many people in my district are right here at that social living where they can just fall through the cracks and become homeless. They could fall through the cracks and live in their car. They could fall through the cracks into poverty. They're just like one paycheck away from that. And this pandemic, economically, yes, we may have some people in my district, I don't think many, that will die of COVID, but I'm more concerned about how many ultimately, because of the recession that's coming, will have their lives turned upside down and end up in poverty. And that's my job, to try to make sure that that doesn't happen, or it happens to as few people as possible. And that's what scares me the most, especially my small businesses. Again, I up on the website, I went to a place where I got there at about noon, and I bought something, and she showed me a coffee pot that she sells coffee. She said that coffee's been there since 8 o'clock. I was her first customer that day, and this was yesterday. That's how bad the economy is in my district. And so I'm looking to get some financial aid from the economic stimulus. I now have to go back to Sacramento, make sure they squeeze it down to South LA, because everybody's seeing these big businesses. Look, I'm not trying to tell you McDonald's should go out of business. I'm not trying to put Taco Bell out of business. I'm not trying to put these chains out of business. But the largest number of businesses in my district are mom and pop. And we've got to do something to ensure that they stay relevant after this is over. And this will be over. And once it's over, we're going to go into kind of an economic slump. And then I got to make sure they don't become victims again after the virus. Then they become victims again because of the recession. That may be a harder job for me to do than doing this.
Okay. So first to our attendees that are listening, so we see all of your questions, but for the very technical questions about facilities, we don't have all the answers like that. We can go back to get those answers, but some of those answers I'm passing over because I'm aware that we don't have those specific answers. We can check. For instance, from Antoine, he asked, is there any antibacterial resources being provided for people inside, such as masks, hand sanitizers, vitamin C, etc.? And if not, is there a way that we can donate or create a fund for these things to actually be sent into the facilities?
So someone asked me about doing a GoFundMe account. And I said, I would love to do it, but what are we going to do it for? Is it for the clinics? Is it for people formerly incarcerated? Is it for people who are in prison? Is it for the immigrant population? Is it for seniors? So you got to narrow it down. This sounds like, well, let me check first to see if what are the cleanliness standards, because I think that's where your question goes to. Again, I can call Secretary Diaz and see what are their procedures now that are different from what they used to do. Because I think they need to have stepped that up quite a bit to make sure that every cell is almost hospital clean. And I think that's where your question is getting to, making sure that they're almost hospital clean. And we could find that out. If that's not happening, and it's not happening quickly, I would love to establish a GoFundMe account to try to put that money together, because that is something specific. That is something that is relevant. That is something that is needed now. And guess what? After someone makes that donation, we get those supplies, we can see immediate impact and immediate results that shows that it works. That's why I like those kind of GoFundMe. I'm not a real big fan of ones that say, send me money because I need help. No, I like ones where I'm a big proponent of making sure we measure success. This sounds, this question says, that's something we could measure. If after we improve the cleanliness of the cells, because we always talk about washing your hands for 20 seconds And you know, I did something this morning as I was cooking. Um, my mother used to wash everything down with bleach before she started cooking. And I used to think, Ma, why are you doing that? And she did that all my life. Now it sounds like my mother's bleach man. She would like take a little cap full of bleach and put it in her dishwater after she already put the dishwater in there. And I used to think, this is like overkill, Ma. Well, guess what? My mother was ahead of her time, ahead of time. So your discussion about cleanliness and staying on top of it is perfect. And if CDCR had not put things in place, I think they would love to increase the amount of protection that are within CDCR and in the prison system.
So last question, and then I want to move to the notes from inside that we shared. The last question specifically, do we know, so for instance, even with my staff, being here and free and seeing everything that's going on in the community, there's a higher level of stress that definitely affects the mental health of people. Is that being addressed for the people that are currently in custody? Is there additional counseling or therapy available for them to talk to someone at this unique time in our history, facing something that we've never faced before?
So what I learned with the Youth Reinvestment Fund, which is monies to give to individuals that are working on the front line of dealing with young kids that are experiencing trauma. You know, you see it, you know, right now in South LA, if a kid had seen a drive-by shooting, if a kid had seen domestic violence, if a kid is being bullied, if a kid is experienced all of that, and then there's no food in the house, parents are incarcerated, someone might be on drugs, that's a lot for me to handle as an adult. That's probably a lot for Sam to handle. And he's been through quite a bit. Can you imagine if you're 9, 10, 11 years old, what that's like? And what I found is there are no safeties. There are no mental health safety systems, especially in disadvantaged communities. We generally wait till the event is over, and then we start thinking about mental health. Mental health is, it's like the last thing we kind of think of. And I might actually, I will bring this up in our discussions. We have weekly discussions with the speaker. I will talk to him about how do we set up an infrastructure, or how do we put out promos, or how do we tell people where they can go, where they can seek mental health professionals online, or we can do Zoom stuff like this, so people can talk to one another and kind of relieve the stress. A friend of mine said she was going to hot yoga today. I said, whoa, 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 we're not supposed to do that. And she said, no, I'm doing hot yoga at home. We're on Zoom, and there's about 30 of us with the instructor. And I was like, oh, okay. So we can do business as usual. We probably provide more mental health professionals, because now we can use this technology. I have no idea how many people are on this town hall, but think about it. If I had someone that was into yoga or into meditation or into other things that could come for free of charge, just do Zoom stuff to help people get through the COVID epidemic problems, because there are a lot of people scared to death in their homes right now. I've knocked on so many doors where people have told me, is it over? I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I'm locked here. I feel like I'm a prisoner. What can I do? And I haven't, and the most important question they always ask is, when will it be over? And when I tell them I don't know, you can see their shoulders go down even more so. You can see the stress of all the world problems coming on them. And watching TV doesn't help, because you just get more and more bad news. And so this might be a good idea to figure that out, and maybe we start in the prisons. because we really don't have I mean, and Sam probably can attest to it more so than mine. We really don't have a real robust mental health programs in CDCR. And maybe the time is we should seriously not only invest in it, but look at that as a way of improving the conditions within the prison system.
So thank you for that answer, and thank you for all of the attendees that have sent questions. I will try to answer some of these. Some of these questions we could actually answer ourselves, because we do have some of the information in regards to things such as packages and things of those nature. But I'd like to shift. Did you ever get your notes back up?
Yeah.
Okay, so would you like to read notes from inside? I think there are 3 notes we have. If you'd like to read those.
You mean from? I think you mentioned that. You mentioned a lot of it about what's going on in the state prisons. So inmates that show symptoms are taken for testing and isolated. The department is also working to identify inmates likely to have been in contact with infected individuals in accordance with the guidance from the Department of Public Health and CDC. All incoming inmates are automatically quarantined for 14 days prior to joining the general population. Visitation, as I said, for the time has been canceled. The part I didn't get a chance to talk about, the department has worked with the phone provider to provide 2 free days of phone calls. Those 2 days were March 19th and March 26th. My office is working with the department staff to either get more free days or decrease phone rates during this time. As you know, those rates can be pretty significant. Transfer from county jails and juvenile probation into state facilities have been canceled for the next month to reduce the spread. Parole hearings, which is probably what everybody wants to hear about, have been paused until April 13th to reduce in-person contact. I'm going to stay on top of this. When the hearings resume in April, they will be remote. So to avoid large gatherings, CDCR is telling us that approximately 400 hearings are being delayed as a result of this pause. We're going to work with the administration to ensure all steps are taken to reduce this backlog when hearings resume. We're going to get rid of that backlog as soon as possible, because no one should be incarcerated longer than they should. Since volunteers and program providers are no longer allowed inside, and I mentioned this, the department is working on in-cell educational programming that both offers a safe alternative while allowing those incarcerated to collect credits. And then finally, the governor has issued guidance to law enforcement, and the Chief Justice has done the same to courts, that low-level crimes should not be enforced, or diversion and other programs should be seriously considered to avoid increasing our incarcerated populations. So in many ways, we're moving toward that state that we all want to be.
So thank you for that update. So there was a question about phone calls, so I hope that answered. 2 phone calls a week, I believe it's Thursday and Friday, free. I actually got a note from one of our ARC members that said she had not talked to her family member for some years because of the cost of collect calls, and she was able to actually talk to that person when these free calls came in. So that is in place right now throughout the state, 2 free calls per person per week. Couple of we have a few notes from people inside that I'd like to share, and maybe take a couple of minutes to discuss, as we're just about at our cutoff time, but definitely want to elevate the voices and amplify the voices. So this is from a person that's currently in the state custody, and he says, we're concerned about the uncertainty of COVID-19 and fear that we will not receive adequate medical attention if needed. Our program is currently modified, but we're trying our best to prepare in case we are put on quarantine. Unlike everyone outside that are hoarding toilet paper out there, we're just trying to have enough food in our cells. And I think that goes to making sure that people that are currently in custody have access to packages and canteen, though I know it has to be restricted because we have to practice social distancing, but can we make sure that that access is available for them to be able to continue to receive packages and be able to go to the prison store to be able to buy food and supplies.
So I will ask, and also ask the Department of Public Health, what is the proper way? I'm not a physician, so I don't want to practice being a doctor, even on this. But I don't know how. We want to make sure nothing within those packages will help with the spread of it. So there's a part of public safety or public health safety, and also ensuring that everybody's protected inside. So that's something I can follow up on.
Thank you so much. Second note, and this is just a note to share from someone inside. Prison already isolates inmates from society, but not being able to see our family is very painful. Pause for Life makes the situation less stressful for many of the guys. The enjoyment of spending time with my dog takes my mind off of this difficult situation. And that was, and he continues to say, also, many of us have upcoming dates to meet with the parole board, and we're anxious to find out when our hearing will finally take place. We worry that we will be rescheduled for our board hearings far out and have us do more time than we're supposed to. When all we can think about is being home with our family, especially during these times. So you've already answered that, basically making sure that hearings, that backlog is eliminated and gotten rid of, and we don't keep people in custody longer than they need to be there. So we're at our cutoff point. I want to thank you again for joining us on our second Fireside Chat. Appreciate the work that you've been doing in the community. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone that's listening?
Hopefully you do more of these. These are really important. I think one of the, I'm a half, so you understand, I'm a half full kind of guy. And I do believe as this tragedy moves on, when we come out of it, we're going to learn a lot of great skills that we can move forward with. Having Zoom, having Sam, having more town halls, having us talk more to our constituents, giving them information and hopefully helping them get through some difficult times, I think will be the future. And this will be one of the positive things. So I commend you, Sam, for doing it. I commend ARC for putting it together. And I recommend, I encourage, and implore you to do more of this, because there are people out there huddled in their home that need this.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member Reggie Jones-Sawyer. And on that note, I'd like to share for our listeners, next Friday, we're scheduled to have a fireside chat with Assembly Member Sydney Kamlacher-Dove, Norma Kupi-An, who's our manager for the Women's and Non-Binary Department at ARC, and a special guest that I'm certain everyone would like to hear from, that has been doing a lot of re-entry work over the years. If you'd like to make a donation to ARC, our website, to help support us through this coronavirus, the Stand Together Foundation, which is a huge foundation, has generously invited us to take part in the Help the Helpers campaign, in which they will be matching all individual gifts from grantees. So if you'd like to hear a gift right now, please.
I know I can do that.
So literally, what we're saying is these are matching funds. If you go to our website, you'll be able to follow that. Follow us on social media. Follow Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer on social media, so we can see what's continuously going on and support our communities. And again, thank you so much, Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer, for this great conversation and the work that you've been doing in our community. We greatly appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.